Today is Friday, December 14th, 2018, and I'm in the home of Sergeant Major John Canley in Oxnard, California. And on behalf of the Conejo Valley chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution, as well as the Aquila Chase chapter, National Society, Colonial Dames, 17th Century, for the Veterans History Project of the Library of Congress. Ed Lynch of Advanta Videography will be filming the interview. This is John's story. For the record, I'd like you to introduce yourself and tell us when you served and in what branch of the service.
John Canley. I served in the United States Marine Corps from 1953 to 1981.
Okay. Where and when were you born?
I was born in Caledonia, Arkansas, December 20th, 1937.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in the Marine Corps, but Arkansas, Louisiana.
And what was your life like while you were growing up?
Just a happy, busy, church-going life, really.
Yeah. And you worked while you were going to school,
yes,
right?
Yes, I worked part-time. I mean, in the summertime, we cut lawns. And I worked, later on, I worked at a drugstore, stock delivery on a bicycle.
And tell me a little bit about your parents. How about your father?
My father was...
He was J.M. Canley, correct?
Right, J.M. Canley. He was a workaholic. He was a workaholic. And really, he was an alcoholic too, because he didn't know that, but I did. My father could drink more than any one man. I mean, he loved his hard liquor. So if he was not working, he was actually sort of drinking. That's the way I remember him.
But he was a hard worker. He had a lot of really intense jobs.
I mean, hard worker. He was, at the end, he worked at a chemical plant, but no one wanted to work with him when it came to, he was a logger. He was a logger. At that time, they had like, you would have two men on a saw, one on each end, and it would take two people to keep up with him, two. So you'd have like a crew of three, vice a crew of two, with this one saw.
He was physically fit.
Yeah. He was about 6'4", weighed about 240, and all muscle. I mean, all just, yes.
And he was also a farmer.
Yes,
at one time.
yes. He was that was sort of his hobby too, because he had we had probably about a half an acre garden right next to the house, and he raised everything from corn to tomatoes, even had a few watermelons there.
And he spent a lot of time in that garden, right?
Right, when he was not working, or even when he was working in the garden, he would still be sort of drinking,
And how about your mom?
She was a very religious person.
Leola,
right? She was an excellent cook, and she always had a little restaurant, little hamburger place, and it was always a couple different locations, but right next to the house.
And she made sure that you and your siblings went to church about 3 times a week.
Oh, this was, her and her church, this 3 times a week, right? 3 times a week. I hated it.
And you had a big family. Siblings?
Yes.
Can you tell me about them? How about your brothers?
My oldest brother, he sort of rebelled against everything. He was a hard person to handle, I would say.
That was LJ?
LJ, right.
Mm-hmm. Right. No name, just initials, right?
That was his name, LJ.
Just like your dad.
Right.
Uh-huh.
He didn't do too well in school either, because he wouldn't study. He ran his own program, In fact, I used to sort of do his homework.
Really?
Yeah, because he had other things to do.
Well, I think you told me he was kind of a hustler.
Right. I would use that word. He was a hustler. Hard worker, but a hustler.
And a good pool player.
Good pool player. That was his name. Pool.
Mm-hmm.
Pool.
And unfortunately, he was murdered.
Yeah, he was murdered.
That's unfortunate. And Paul? What about Paul?
Paul, he was a hard worker. Two families. His second wife's very young. She was about 20 years younger.
Mm-hmm.
And he wound up having a second family with her, 3 kids, a boy and 2 girls. And he actually worked for Boeing for about 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then sort of started working for himself. He was a person that had many talents. He could fix things.
Mm-hmm.
So he sort of went into the washing machine, dryer repair business, recycling them.
Yeah.
And he was good at laying carpet. So that was the 2 businesses that he sort of had himself.
And Lawrence?
Lawrence, he worked for the city of Santa Barbara for about 15 years. And then quit and went up to Washington. And up in Washington, he was sort of working for himself. He did produce, sales.
And Hilton was the youngest?
Hilton is youngest, so Hilton still lives in this area. He lives here in Oxnard. He had some problems. Because once my mother died, it really affected him.
Yeah, he was only about 17 when she died.
Right, exactly.
How's he doing now?
He's okay. He's okay. That's all I can say. He's okay.
And you have 2 sisters?
Right, 2 sisters. Anne, who lives here in Oxford, her husband, Charles, who passed away about 4 years ago. Marion, she lives up in Lompoc. She has 2 kids. She lives with her daughter. Her son, Jamal, he lives in Santa Maria. So they're sort of together, we're close together.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of close family.
And you were pretty close to your sisters growing up.
I was close to my older sister.
Anne.
Right, Anne. Mm-hmm. I really didn't know that much about my youngest sister.
Mm-hmm.
I was away during that time.
Right.
In the Marine Corps.
And Anne worked in the restaurant with your mom, right?
Right. She's an excellent cook even today.
And LT, the oldest boy, kind of mentored the younger brothers. Is that right?
I mean,
or maybe you mentored them. Your
well,
second
he was
oldest,
the
right?
oldest. He was the oldest.
Uh-huh.
You know, I mean, you know, he had that respect as being the oldest, but that was about it.
Okay.
You know.
And what about your own children? Ricky, Yukari,
Yeah, Ricky.
and Trisha?
Ricky Yukari. Ricky being my firstborn. Yukari, secondborn, same mother. I never married their mother. I was in the Marine Corps at the time, stationed in Japan, and always on the move. You know, my focus was not family. You know, my focus was on sort of my career at that time. Tricia was my youngest daughter. I was married to her mom for about 3 years, and that sort of didn't work out. We were the best of friends. I guess all I can say is that I was married once, and that's it for me. You know, the good thing about that is my daughter, and I'm still good friends with my ex.
That is good.
You know.
And I now know you have some grandchildren. Can you tell me about them?
Oh yeah, well you just look. You know, my Tricia, she, my oldest granddaughter. She's my son's daughter.
Mm-hmm. What's her name?
This is Ricky's firstborn. What would you?
I asked you what her name was. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. That's okay.
This is she's my firstborn, Candace, and my secondborn would be Justice, who is also Ricky's son, and Tricia, Victoria. She's my third grandkid.
And you were telling me she's going to college?
She's a freshman at Oregon University.
Nice.
Candace, who is a graduate of Washington State.
Oh, very good. And what about Justice?
Justice, he had a couple of years of junior college. He just came back from Japan. He's just sort of traveling around now. He's not doing too much. You know, I think he's back in Washington, living with his mom.
Traveling's a good thing to do when you have the opportunity.
Well, he don't really. He's just doing that. I mean, his father sort of kicked him out, and he went to Japan. Grandparents over there, right?
Oh.
And they wound up kicking him out, so he has some minor problems.
Okay, so you have some history, your family history in the military. Your father and both of his brothers joined the Army?
Right, the two oldest kids, they served in the Second World War. My father got out after about 6 months, because he had 2 kids and 3 brothers were in, so they let him out.
But the other 2 stayed in for a long time.
The others stayed in over 4 years. In fact, each one of them spent over 40-something months overseas.
What were their names? Do you remember?
Yeah, that was L.V. Canley and Melvin. L.V. and Melvin Canley.
And one of them was a cook? Which one?
One was a cook and one was motor transport.
Okay.
L.V. was motor transport and Uncle Melvin, he was a cook.
Did their service inspire you to go into the military when you were young?
I think somewhat. L.V. Was my favorite of the uncles. He was right next to my father as far as he was the second son. Uncle Melvin was the third son. I'd say yes. I would say yes.
Good. I understand there was a movie that also inspired you to go into the military. Should we talk about that?
Well, we can talk about that. The Sands of Evil. That's why I decided to go in the Marine Corps.
The sergeant.
He's here.
Well, what do you know? Stryker.
Hello, Thomas.
Thought you were in the first.
I was. Sit down. Just sit down, Thomas, anywhere. My name is Stryker. Sergeant John M. Stryker. You're gonna be my squad. A rifle squad. 3 of us have seen action. Corporal Dunn, Charlie Bass, and myself. You're gonna learn from us. In boot camp, you learned out of a book. Out here, you gotta remember the book and learn 1,000 things that have never been printed, probably never will be. You gotta learn right, and you gotta learn fast. And any man that doesn't want to cooperate, I'll make him wish he hadn't been born.
That's about all I say about that. I mean, I was sort of going to go in service, contemplating going in service, mainly because of, my uncles, because, they used to talk about it all the time. But I decided that I didn't like the Army. I don't know why, I just didn't like the Army.
But in that movie, it was about Marines.
Yeah, right. But I never did like the Army. I don't know. I just didn't.
Wasn't your thing.
No, I never thought about going in the Army.
So, do you know what part of that movie inspired you to go into the Marines, or what you remember about the movie?
I think it was just the camaraderie, I think that's mostly what it was. The camaraderie with, that they. That's what inspired me to go in. I think to the Marine Corps was the camaraderie that those Marines had.
As you know, while I was doing my homework for this interview, I watched that movie.
Right.
And I noted that there was a lot of young men died in that movie, but that didn't frighten you?
Well, I mean, when you think of war, that's what you think about. Is people die in war. So no, that did not frighten me. No.
Okay.
I mean, people die in war. That's just the way it is.
But you were pretty young when you decided to become a Marine. In fact, you had to use your brother's birth certificate.
Right.
Tell me about that.
I went down and took the test. I passed the test. And when I went down, you didn't need all these documents. But I sort of had a plan. I knew that I could produce a document, which was my brother's birth certificate.
Mm-hmm.
And the recruiter, instead of, my brother's name was L.J., right?
Right.
So when the recruiter looked, he said, I said, well, yeah, that's a mistake. It's J.L., and that was basically it.
Because your name's Johnny Lee
Right,
Canley.
right.
Clever. And you did a lot of preparation as a 15-year-old before.
Well, once I decided, I think that movie came out in 49. I might be wrong. I might be off a year.
It's about that time.
But about that, I basically started training then. You know, just jogging, doing push-ups, pull-ups, sit-ups. So when I went into boot camp, I was in pretty good shape. I was probably in the best shape of any of the recruits.
So you were determined,
Well, I knew you had to pass the training.
right?
You know, I knew you had to pass the training. You had to make it through boot camp.
And you chose the Marines partly because of that movie, but partly because you wanted to be a member of the best of the best. Is that right?
Well, when I think about it, I mean, after, yes, but I think that initially I was impressed by their camaraderie, their training. I mean, I was impressed by them. I was never impressed by the Army. The Army never impressed me.
I got that.
Right?
So you enlisted for 4 years in November, just 20 days before your 16th birthday.
Right.
And talk to me about your basic training and your first 4 years and how you advanced during that enlistment.
To me, basic training, I'll say basic training was easy because basic training to me was just competition. You got transition from civilian to military. That's all about, just close order drill, doing things together, right? Of course, you had a series of tests and all that in every phase. But to me, it was all just competition. I had no problem getting promoted. I made sergeant in my first enlistment. I was with a special court martial.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
tell me about that, by the way.
It was for fighting. It was no big thing, but
A fist fight with somebody?
well, it was a fist fight at first, but then it escalated.
Oh.
It escalated where you had a entrenching tool involved, you had a bayonet involved, that type of thing, and that's probably the reason why there was a court martial. Is because of those weapons being involved.
But even with that, you still advanced rather quickly.
Well, I made meritorious corporal, and then a couple of months later, I made meritorious sergeant. And that was just a matter of, and all that was a competition. Of course, you got to get the recommendation, but then you go in front of these boards from private first class to corporal, not too bad, but from corporal to sergeant, they would only have one quota. They're only going to promote one in the battalion. So that competition was pretty tough. Practical application, you appear in front of a board, you ask questions, and of course the practical application is outside drilling troops, compass and map, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I made meritorious sergeant with the special court martial my first term.
So you did become the best of that group.
Like I said, to me, the Marine Corps was just competition. That's all it was. And in those days, you didn't make a lot of money, and there was not a lot of things to do. we didn't have, you might have, say, one Marine out of 100 might have a car, going on Liberty, you went on Liberty, you caught a bus. You go into LA, most of the time it was bus, unless you had a friend that had a vehicle, but most of the time it was a bus.
Where did you do your basic training?
Where?
Where?
I was West Coast, so I was down at San Diego, and from San Diego, I went up to Pendleton for the advanced infantry training. But during that time, the rifle range was about 10 miles from MCRD. In fact, right around where San Diego State is.
Okay.
Right off of, we call it Camp Matthews. But now all that is up at Pendleton. You have your boot camp at San Diego. Advanced training, rifle range, and all that is at Pendleton.
And what about the instructors and the people who just graduated boot camp? Was there a little harassment going on?
Well, to me, it was you had one drill instructor. To me, you had one drill instructor who was normally a sergeant, and his assistants were PFCs. The only one that you had any respect for, and I think this was with most recruits, was the senior drill instructor, that sergeant. The assistants, which was PFCs, and I remember there was just one corporal, one Governor Corporal Peterson. Rest of them just harassing you. That's all they were doing. I mean, they could drill you, but they were just harassing you. That's basically all they were doing.
Testing you.
If you call it testing you, I mean, what they were doing, just about anyone could do. Just about anyone could do.
And I know your mother was a really good cook and had a restaurant, so what'd you think of the food in basic training?
Well, the food, I was a eater, but the only thing I didn't like was the corned beef.
Why not?
Well, no seasoning or nothing. Just, you used to consuming tasty food, and all of a sudden, the corned beef had no taste.
Just boiled meat.
Just nothing, meat in hot water. That's all. But other than that, it was good quality food, though, But the taste was that corned beef. I didn't like corned beef.
But do you like it now when somebody else makes it?
Oh, I mean, I liked it before.
Oh, but not the way they made it.
But not in the Marine Corps, not in the Marine Corps.
Do you specifically recall any of your instructors from basic training?
Do I know?
Recall any of the instructors?
Right, my drill instructor. Right, Sergeant Blake, and then this Corporal Patterson. These PFCs, no, I don't remember any of them. And they were always there. You had the sergeant, like he was there probably about, I would say, half of the time, and this Corporal Patterson, he was there maybe half of the time. The other maybe 4 or 5 PFCs, they were there all the time. I mean, they would pop up in the evening, at night, or but all they were doing was harassing you. To me, what they did didn't make any sense.
Okay. What did you and your friends do for recreation? Or did you have time for that?
Recreation, I mean, you had, you mean in boot camp?
Sure.
No, nothing boot camp. They, I guess once a week they have like sort of organized, I guess you would call it an organized sort of field meet. You know, this is where you would tug of war or stuff like that. You know, you climbing ropes and physical things, sort of.
Sounds like just more competition and
Right,
training, but
exactly,
for fun.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
What kind of special training did you receive, even after boot camp? You got normal combat training, right?
Well, right. Normal combat training, that was sort of right after boot camp. That's what U-3 infantry. So at Pennington, they had sort of an advanced course for those Marines that were going to be infantry. Went through that. And after that, I think my next training might have been maybe at Picker Meadows. That was cold weather training, so that would be a special training. And then I think after that, probably NCO school. After that, now I took just about every 03 course in the Marine Corps. You know, that's probably about maybe 14 or 15 courses in my occupational field. It teaches you everything about infantry.
Okay. Was that at the Marine Corps Institute?
Right.
Okay.
Right. And in addition to that, you know, there's NCO school, and then there's when I became a gunnery sergeant, my secondary MOS would be career planning. That's where, you know, I attended a Navy career counseling course at San Diego, I think for about a month. Yeah, I was the only Marine there. All the rest of them was Chief Petty Officer. And I was a gunnery sergeant E7. My next school would have been the First Sergeant School, which is when I got selected for First Sergeant. I was in Japan at the time. So when I came back to the States, I went right to school for that.
Didn't you take some guerrilla warfare training while you were in Japan?
Oh, that was. I spent quite a bit of time on Okinawa. At that time, there was a guerrilla warfare school at Northern Training Area, and every company, infantry company, went through that training. I had the opportunity to go through it as a infantry company. I was a sergeant at the time, Sergeant E4. And then I had the opportunity to go through it when I was in anti-tanks, because I was my platoon was attached to an infantry battalion, and we went through that training. But there was also one MCI course out on that kind of guerrilla warfare. I completed that course as a Sergeant E5.
Okay. I'm not really sure what this means. Maybe you can explain it to me, but you told me you served as an 0369 unit leader.
Oh, see, that's my MOS. I'm an infantry person, right?
Correct.
So, infantry battalions, right? Infantry battalion at the time I was in was about 1,200 Marines, Now it's about 800 and something. Each battalion has 4 infantry companies.
Okay.
And of course you have H&S Company, which have the supporting units like 81s. So when these companies go out to fight, all these supporting units are attached to these companies,
Mm-hmm.
right? Now my job as an E6, actually you get the MOS when you take the test for E6. This was in my case, you know. You take the test as an E5, the General Military Service Test, and then a specialist test, in my case, 0369 Infantry Unit Leader.
Oh, okay.
Once you pass that test, you pick up that at MOS, 0369 Infantry Unit Leader, which means that you are a qualified platoon sergeant, which means that you and a lieutenant make up a team to lead this Marine Corps platoon of Marines, which is approximately about 56 Marines.
Okay, thanks for explaining that to me.
Right, so you have the lieutenant and you have the staff sergeant, 0369 Infantry Unit Leader, leading this platoon.
Mm-hmm. All right, thanks. So I think this was in Okinawa. You were assigned to combat garrison, a non-combat assignment, or
Well,
was that in Okinawa?
you have, you know, that's right. You're referring to when I left Vietnam in 1970.
Oh, this is after.
Right. That's after. So you have 2 types of duty in the Marine Corps. You have combat duty and you have garrison duty.
Okay.
In other words, garrison duty is where there's no bullets flying. You know.
That'd be the kind I would like.
Right.
All right. And you said at that time your company was featured on the front page of the Stars and Stripes?
Oh, no.
Or did I have these all mixed up?
Let's go. I was in Vietnam every year from 1965 to 1970
Mm-hmm.
for 3 tours. If you would count the waters, I was in the waters in 1964 because I was permanently stationed on Okinawa, and my unit, I was at the time I was in anti-tanks, which is a supporting element. You know, it's what supports the infantry. And I was part of what they call a battalion landing team. That's a force in readiness in case something happens, you're the first to go in. So in 1964, I was out in the waters, prepared to go into Vietnam at that time.
Okay.
But I went back to Okinawa after that mission, and I rotated to the States in first of 65.
Mm-hmm.
But then I was scheduled to go in the drill field as a drill instructor. And at that time, a lot of Marines wanted to go in the drill field because you could go there and make military staff sergeant.
Mm-hmm.
But what happened is when I got orders, I had been selected for staff sergeant regular promotion. So I really didn't want to go. I couldn't meet my by date, so I missed my class. So while I was waiting for the next class, I went downtown. I was working with the Navy as an MP.
Oh.
But I really didn't want to go on the drill field because at that time, it was easy to get promoted meritoriously, but they was busted just as many as they was promoting.
Mm.
You know, because at that time there was, what did they call it, the McCoy or something that happened down in Paris Island, where those Marines got drowned.
Mm-hmm.
So they was busting drill instructors for looking at recruits wrong. So instead of going on the drill field, I had been downtown for about 4 or 5 months, and they forgot that I was supposed to go on the field in the next class, and of course I didn't bring it to anyone's attention. And the sergeant major seen me. I used to walk across from my quarters right out the gate and catch the bus and go downtown to 2nd Street, and I had to walk a block to my workplace. He caught me going across the street one morning and said, "Canley, what are you doing?" And on my MP gear, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm going to work." He said, "You're supposed to be on the drill field." He says, "What happened?" I said, "Well, he said, they never call you." He said, "You were supposed to notify them." He said, "Well, you're going to that next class." So that next day I went and put in my AA form to go to Vietnam.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alrighty. So you did 3 tours in Vietnam.
I did, on my 3rd tour, this is when they started to pull troops out of Vietnam in 1970. I just happened to be in the 1st unit that was being pulled out. So my unit was pulled out of Vietnam back to Okinawa, Japan, Camp Swab. And that's when I said my unit came out on the front page of the Status.
Oh, okay.
Right? We was going from combat to garrison.
All right.
And during that 7 to 8 day period, I was getting the Marines ready for garrison. You know, we came out, pack squared away, press utilities. But anyway, we came out on the front page of Status.
Okay.
Right?
I understand now. So, is that when you were given a platoon command, where you were not given a platoon command?
Oh no, that's
it. Okay,
that's
let me start.
That's when I first went to Nam.
Okay, well that's what I want to do. I want to go back to your first tour. Let's go
Nam.
through them. When you arrived in Da Nang, tell me.
When I
What
arrived
happened?
in Da Nang in 1965, there was a big operation going on at that time, and all around the airstrip was nothing but body bags. And it sort of caught me. I said, what is this? I actually went and see, he said, "Oh, those are body bags." I said, "Body bags?" I'd seen body bags. I'd never really seen a body bag with a body in it, right?
Right.
And these were stacked 4 or 5 high. He says, Marines got trapped down in, I think he said, Ashro Valley. And they had to, the casualties. That's what I think that's the only time that I was ever afraid in Vietnam. It made you realize that this is for real, right? So that was sort of my indoctrination to Vietnam, was all these body bags.
How old were you at that time?
The fact that these Marines had got trapped in this ambush and took all these casualties,
How old were you when you got to Vietnam the first time?
Oh, I was what, about 28, right, 27.
Okay, so you'd been
Yeah.
in the Marines for quite a while.
Yeah, I've been in
But
Marines,
still-
10 years.
Still a jolt, isn't it?
Pardon?
It's still a jolt to see that.
Well, the fact that that you don't want it tells you that, it reiterates that it's real. To me, that's what it did.
Yeah.
You look in all these dead bodies, right?
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I felt that I was one of the most qualified 0369 infantry unit leaders. Now keep in mind what a 0369 is. infantry, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're an infantry unit leader, and that's your primary job. And it's like most infantry platoon commanders, young lieutenants, they want that platoon. They want to be a platoon commander, and it's the same for most 0369 infantry unit leaders enlisted. They want that platoon. So here I go to Vietnam. I'm expected to get a platoon, and the sergeant major gives me a 106 platoon. And you have to remember that when you talk about other type weapons, when the platoon goes out to fight, they're attached out, right? You got H&S Company that has the supporting weapons like 81s, flames. But when those infantry companies go out to fight, then those supporting weapons from H&S Company, they're attached to them. So if I'm a platoon sergeant, 0369 infantry unit leaders, I have a platoon, which is basically 3 squads, but now reinforced to platoon has all these attached units.
Mm-hmm.
All these attached units. Like you could have a mortar section with you. You could have a 3.5 rocket section with you. You can attach units, that boosts this platoon's capability,
Right.
But these supporting units, they don't really train with you. They have their own training, but when you go to fight, they become a part of you, right?
Right.
So it's like take a company which is 3 platoons. Now this whole company, when you look at the 3 platoons, they might even have a light or a heavy section of tanks with them. In other words, they might have from 2 to 3 tanks with them, right? And they have they have aircraft on call, right?
Right.
So this is the supporting units that boost up their capability depending on what the situation is, right? But every staff sergeant or lieutenant, 03, their desire is to have that platoon. That tells they want to fight the enemy.
Mm-hmm.
They want to be able to confront the enemy head on. So platoons, they do that. They're out in the field. They train together. They get all these supporting units that come in and be a part of them to boost up their capability, depending on what the situation is.
Mm-hmm.
So when I went to Vietnam, that's what I wanted, right? Although there's other 0369 positions, for example, 106s, flames, rockets, but you don't want that, because when it comes down to the fighting, all of your people are going to be detached out. See,
okay.
they're going to be detached out to these companies and these platoons. And basically you're going to be there with basically nothing to do, really. Just sort of hoping that you get your people back, you know.
I see.
They,
So when you did get your first combat platoon,
okay, so I report in, the sergeant major, so we need you in one. I said, you need me in 106s. Now he's looking at my book, right? He got my book there, right? Of course I've been in 106s. You know, I was a platoon sergeant, I was a platoon commander in 106s, Antos. But I was also a platoon sergeant and a platoon commander as an infantry platoon, right? So I don't see why you put me over here in 106s, because in 106s, it's just sort of, when you look at the platoon commander and the platoon sergeant, it's sort of just about training. You know, you train them to be proficient, but when it comes to going out to fight the enemy, they're detached out, and you don't even have a job, right? You know, right? You know, I mean, sure, if you want to go along with one of the platoons, with one of the sections, you can do that. But most of the time, you're going to be sort of in the rear with the gear, you know, right? So why would you assign someone who has proven talent right in front of you as being a platoon sergeant and a platoon commander, you know, doing training, right? You know, never combat, but doing training.
right?
But that's all you can go by. But anyway, I wound up being a 106 platoon sergeant probably for about 2.5 months. And the way I got my platoon was they went out on an operation. You have to keep in mind that in combat situation, people are not, some of the Marines, they're not really fighting all the time, you know, right?
Right.
You know, because they always have a base camp. A base camp is somewhere that's sort of secure, and basically all you got to do is worry about, you know, having a 360 and keeping the enemy out of your area. So of course you go out, you know, 24 hours a day, you have security, and then you're sending out patrols to keep them out of this sort of safe area. But you go out to fight, the big time is when you find out where the enemy is, so you go to the enemy to defeat them, right? You know, so I'm not saying that this home base is 100% safe, you know, but you're fairly safe back there, you know,
Right.
because all you're doing is just perimeter security and sweep and make sure the enemy don't come and overrun your position, and you do a lot of training back there,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So the first time I got my platoon was my battalion had taken more than 50% casualties from platoon sergeants and platoon commanders. So myself and the staff sergeant Perry, we going out to replace these platoon sergeants that got wounded or killed in action, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you know, we chopper, we go in. First of all, the pilot is saying, "Oh, that's showing us where they are." And it was hard for me to understand how they got trapped in an area like that. They got caught into an ambush. And if you can vision going in to take over a platoon, I think my platoon had about 30 or 31 people in it, and you don't even know the radio operator, you don't know anyone there, and you're on the fire,
Mm-hmm.
right? Can you vision that?
No. because I've not been there.
Well, I'm just saying, you know it wouldn't be too pleasant.
No, it's uncomfortable, I'm sure, to try to
Exactly.
lead people you don't know and you're not familiar with.
Exactly.
So how did you manage?
Well, it last 2 or 3 days, and it was over, and we, I got to sort of know my platoon. I mean, you go in and you do what you got to do. You're in charge.
Right. You had some pretty strong feelings about how the young Marines were treated or possibly underappreciated over there.
Young Marines were the best thing that happened to Vietnam. To me, they were the foundation of Vietnam. We had young Marines waiting in Japan, Philippines, Okinawa, to turn 18 to come to Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
You get a new person in, and come to find out this person had a birthday 2-3 days ago, But the big problem in Vietnam was the leadership problem from the top down, The war in Vietnam was a very strange war. Marines were used to fighting that front, the enemy is there and you're here, right?
Right.
All of a sudden you're fighting a war where you don't know where the enemy is,
Or who.
And when right, they're all around you, they're among you. So you could only trust the Marines. In my situation, the Marines.
Mm-hmm.
If I had Vietnamese Havans attached to my platoon, they were just there. In other words, they were there with that Marine. I'm not going to have them on watch by themselves, because you don't know who they are.
Weren't sure you could trust them.
Exactly. I think that because of knowledge from leaders in Vietnam, we lost a lot of people,
Mm-hmm.
because the leaders didn't know what they were doing. Because the young troopers, they do whatever you tell them,
Well, they have to trust you as their leader, right?
Exactly.
And you said maybe they should have prepared their NCOs better during Korea for this.
No, I'm saying that when I look at it, because I sort of know in depth, I think that after Korea, retention, keeping people in the Marine Corps was somewhat of a problem. And what the Marine Corps done at that time was they would sort of give you just about anything that you was qualified for. I'm talking about a B billet, not a B billet. You have the infantry. That's their primary job. They go out, they fight the enemy. They make contact with the enemy, and they destroy the enemy. So what they did was they allowed Tim to go on this, what we call independent duty, these B billets, like Marine Security Guard, for example,
Mm-hmm.
drill instructor, recruiting. Well, that was okay, but then some of them went on that type of duty back to back. In other words, you're 3 years here and you're 3 years here. That's 6 years away from your primary duty.
Right.
And all of a sudden, Vietnam breaks out, and here you are, a staff non-commissioned officer, infantry unit leader,
Mm-hmm.
because when you was last serving as an infantry person, you were like maybe a young corporal, E3, you know, at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden you come back, you are a staff non-commissioned officer, infantry unit leader. You're expected to possess all that knowledge and the leadership principles and traits. You have all these young Marines plus this lieutenant that you got to train, and you don't know anything. You know, so how can you train someone when you don't know yourself?
Right.
Right? How can you train these young Marines? How can you train this lieutenant? Right? Because you're the one that has all the experience. You're that Marine that's been in, say, 8-10 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're the one with all the experience, you're the one with all the knowledge.
You're talking about yourself and people in your position.
I'm talking about an infantry unit leader.
Right.
Right. An infantry unit leader. The one that's actually out in the field leading those young Marines. Right? So you come back after being away, say 6 years, and you're in charge, and you don't know. So if you don't know something, you don't have the confidence to lead these people, right? You don't know how to train them because you don't know yourself. You know, you've been out seagoing, or you've been at an embassy, or you've been out on recruiting.
More administrative type
Exactly,
of duty.
exactly. Those B builders.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually what happened in the Marine Corps for Vietnam. The infantry unit leaders, and I'm saying staff sergeant 0369, it could be sergeant who has qualified to be selected for staff sergeant, but sergeant, senior sergeants and above. So actually you're talking about the senior sergeants, the staff sergeants, and the gunnery sergeants.
So you feel that this situation put those young Marines in jeopardy?
Of course. You know, and you, the only time I ever had a shoulder weapon in combat was when it belonged to some Marine. You know, I took his weapon
Mm-hmm.
for just a short period and used it maybe. But other than that, all I had was a 45.
Right. Because you were technically a manager of these.
I was, right.
The infantry.
Exactly.
And you're.
And you had a lot of staff NCOs, I'll say 0369 infantry unit leaders, that, you know, they got the shoulder weapon and they got all, I mean, I said, what? You know, they got the shotgun and all that.
Kind of a cowboy mentality?
Well, I don't, you know, whatever, you know.
But not what you had expected from leaders.
No, not at all.
It's difficult. Let's talk a little bit about some of the men you served with. How about Colonel Finley?
My favorite commanding officer. My favorite commanding officer. I think that two things I think that made him my favorite commanding officer, right, is training and his love for troops. You know, training for Colonel Finley, along with myself, was just like real war. The only thing was, not live ammunition. And he spent a lot of time in the field. I spent a lot of time in the field with the troops, right? You might see me out on the flank with a fire team as a sergeant major, right, in the field. My love for the Marine Corps was, training and combat.
Being prepared for
Yeah,
whatever came.
Training. The record that I hold in the Marine Corps, and I have not verified it, right? But I know I hold the record, is for being a battalion landing team sergeant major. That's where a colonel and a sergeant major makes up a team, and they command like a battalion. Reinforced battalion at the time when I was in, reinforced with everything, was about 2,200 Marines. They go through a training program, and then they become a task force, and they float around in ships for about 6 months. And everyone know that saying, there's a trouble spot and the Marines are on their way. That's what that is. So I had that job for over 5 years.
How about Bob Shaw?
Oh, I go back with him. It's a family thing with him. In 1982, 81, 82, I think it was 6 young lieutenants report in, and I recognized the name Shaw. And I asked this young lieutenant, I said, you by chance happen to know Captain Shaw that used to be in anti-tanks, Hontos, at Camp Swab in 61, 62? He said, oh, that's my father. But he was an 0302, which is an infantry officer. And like I said before, these 0302 infantry officers in the Marine Corps, they're the cream of the crop in the Marine Corps. In fact, to be an 03, you got to finish real high in your class in order to even put in for it. But anyway, once they pick up that 0302 infantry officer, they want that platoon. They want that platoon, and then they want to go from there to be a company commander, and then eventually they want to be a battalion commander, But Bob Shaw, he was a platoon commander for about 3.5 months. We pulled him up to the S1, made him the personnel officer, legal and all that. He was the hardest working lieutenant in the battalion because for disciplinary action, office hours and all that, that never, not that we had that much, but it never started until 1800, which was 6, and sometimes we'd be there from 6 until 11 or 12 o'clock at night. And I think that would have been okay, but after that assignment, the FMF PAC, the general, 3-star general, he brought him up to be his aide, and that's the reason why he got out.
He didn't want to do that job.
Well, he just he missed out on what he wanted to be, which was a platoon commander and maybe a company commander, right? So he got out, went to Harvard, and got out, made all this money, But yeah, we some longevity with that family.
How about Sergeant Perry?
Perry.
Got made captain after 6 months. You told me about him.
Name Barry?
Mm-hmm. Unless I got it wrong. This
Get
was...
the number, you get the name of it.
Maybe I do. 3 tanks attached to his company.
Oh, no. I don't even remember this guy's name.
Oh, I had the wrong name. Okay.
No, this was
My apologies.
this is the captain that reiterated to me that officers in Vietnam didn't know nothing.
Mm.
Okay, didn't know. They were making captain after about 6 months out of basic code. Let's say in a year.
Right.
They would go to Vietnam, and within, if they survived it, within 6 months, they would be a company commander. Now, this is commanding 200 plus Marines. Now, what happened was I had been a platoon commander for a couple of months, and then they got all these lieutenants in, and then we got all these captains. I don't know where they came from, but I think they came from places where they had sort of been not taking too many casualties,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of them, they were 0302. I think they probably came from down south because all the casualties was up north. And I got this one company commander, I don't even remember his name, I tried to blank that out. But he had been a company commander for about 4 or 5 days. And we got a light section of tanks attached to my company. And my platoon was going to be the point platoon. And he come out, he says, let's mount them up. I said, mount them up? He said, yeah, let's mount them up. He says, this is the first time they've had tanks up in this area, and they're going to be running when they hear this shock. I said, what you mean they're going to be running? He said, well, they ain't never seen or heard anything like that. I said to him, I said, Captain, what makes you think they're going to be running from these tanks when they're not running from B-52s, right? He said, well, let's mount them up. And my platoon, I had 4 KIAs on an initial ambush, And what that did to me was it reiterated to me that these officers didn't know what they were doing, that they really didn't know how to fight that war.
That's
and
a hard...
I had about 7, 8 months in Vietnam then.
That's a hard loss that day, wasn't it?
Yeah. But anyway, from that point on, I sort of made the decision myself, really. I had a little time in combat.
It was more important to you to protect your
Exactly.
Marines,
Exactly.
correct?
Exactly.
So John Legato, I saw a video where he talked about you. He was part of Alpha Company, 1st Battalion, 1st Marines. And he said you never ducked and you never crawled in combat.
Well, I don't think that's true. I think I might have ducked and crawled a little bit, but in combat, you got to move. You got to move, and if you don't, it's not going to be good for you.
Right.
So I always believed in moving. you know.
To protect your troops.
Well, I mean, in order to lead them, you know, I mean, I mean, they might have seen me and in a different way, you know, I can't tell you how they seen me,
Correct.
you know, but I believed in moving.
He said you stood up in the middle of firefights, you spoke softly, and loved your enlisted Marines, never scolding,
Well,
just teaching.
I don't know about standing up. I was always moving. I was always moving. What you have to understand is a lot of these young kids, that's what they were, you know, it was 18-year-olds, right? So
Right.
they're not going to be like me, you know, but I know that they would follow me, you know, right?
Right.
They would follow me.
If you showed
Right.
leadership.
Right,
And,
right, exactly.
you consider yourself a warrior?
I consider myself a leader,
Okay.
a leader of Marines,
Mm-hmm.
you know. There never was a doubt that, you know, with Marines that I trained, right? I don't care what the number was, you know, I always believed that, you know, we would defeat them.
You were confident
Yes,
because of your training and the training that you provided for your
right,
troops.
exactly.
Well, that's good. And so the fearless part really had more to do with, I think you told me there was no better place to go if you had to go, right?
I mean, if you consider yourself a warrior, which people say a warrior, you know, I say leader, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's, you know, we're talking about someone doing a job that they love doing, right?
Right.
So when you look at and think about a leader, if I mean, at one time we all gonna die, right?
Yes.
It's just a matter of when and where. So I can't think of any other place that I would rather die than on the battlefield with my Marines. You know.
Which gave you some confidence there, and I suppose.
I don't know. I mean, I just had the confidence as being the leader. Period.
That's good.
You know.
Very good. You told me you didn't really tolerate cowards.
Well, no, I'm saying leaders. You know, you expect for young Marines to be scared, and you would expect to, you know, maybe occasionally see them with their face in the dirt, right? But not a leader, not a 0369 infantry unit leader, a platoon sergeant. No way.
Well, I was referring to the NCOs.
Right. Well, yeah, the NCO, the seasoned, right, because they set that pace. You know, they set that example. You know, how do you expect for a subordinate to follow you when you're not leading? You know.
Mm-hmm. Didn't you terminate some right on the spot for that?
Well, yeah, I've done that. Right on the spot.
That takes a lot of confidence too.
Well, I don't look at it that way. I think that you're either doing your job or you're not. And if you're not doing your job, especially when it affects subordinates, then why would you be able to remain in that position?
I agree.
We're
with
talking
you.
about in combat, you know, where lives are at stake.
Right, there's no fooling around. It's real.
Exactly.
I agree with you 100%. Major General,
Major General Ray
Smith,
Yeah.
also of Alpha Company, 1st Battalion, 1st Marines, said that you were a fearless fatalist. You believed if it was your day that you would be, if it wasn't your day, that you would be all right. Excuse me. Was he correct?
I mean, those are his words. I mean, those are his words from observation of me. Nothing like that ever crossed my mind, really.
I think it was his observation,
Yeah.
and I believe you that you weren't thinking those things on the battlefield. So
I mean, you do whatever you must do in order to defeat the enemy. Period.
You asked me before when we talked if I had any idea who your favorite general would be, and I guessed right, didn't I?
Yeah, you did that.
Tell me why, and tell me who.
Well, you took Patton. So yeah, if you know, I just think that, I mean, we look at generals and, they have a certain job to do, but I think it's nice for them to get out on the football field every once in a while, at least out on the sideline,
And you felt he led by example.
Right. I mean, a lot of things I didn't believe, but I loved him being out there. I loved him being right out there with him,
Exuding confidence and not showing fear.
Exactly. Well, I don't know about not showing fear.
Well, he may have been afraid, but...
I mean, no, it just, you can't, he wasn't afraid. He wasn't afraid. I don't think that true leaders are afraid, because you can't be a true leader if you are afraid to die, if you're afraid of the enemy. You can't.
No, it's not your job to be afraid out there. It's your job to defeat the enemy, correct?
It's your job to defeat the
enemy.
enemy.
And you're trained to do it, and you're confident that you can.
Exactly.
So he also told me that you thought he knew that young Marines were starving for leadership.
Of course.
Your experience too, I guess.
Of course. That's being a leader is all about, basically it's just all about taking care of Marines.
Mm-hmm.
Basically that's what it amounts to. If they are on the battlefield, I mean, you got to take care of them. You got to lead them to victory. And you just got to take care of them. That's all it is.
Well, I don't mean to embarrass you right now, but I'd like to read a list of your military awards.
I mean, go ahead.
The Rifle Expert Marksmanship Badges, 11 times. The Pistol and Marksmanship Badge, 16 times. The Vietnam Gallantry Cross with 2 silver stars. The Vietnam Gallantry Cross Unit Citation. The United Nations Medal. The Vietnam Campaign Medal. The Vietnam Service Medal with 9 stars. The Korea Defense Medal, Service Medal. The Navy Sea Service Deployment Ribbon with 2 service stars. The Marine Corps Good Conduct Medal with 7 service stars. The National Defense Service Medal with Service Star. The Bronze Star with Combat Distinguished Device. A Purple Heart. The Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medal with Combat Distinguishing Device. The Combat Action Ribbon. and you are the 300th and most recent recipient of the Medal of Honor, the 300th ever awarded since it was established by Congress on December 21st, 1862. You received the Medal of Honor because of your extraordinary heroism during the Battle of Way City. I'd like to read a paragraph that I'd found about that battle. On 31 January 1968, Congressional Medal of Honor recipient John Canley led 147 Mud Marines into Way City, Vietnam. Awaiting them are 10,000 NVA regulars. For 3 days, Alpha Company, 1st Battalion, 1st Marines battled these overwhelming odds minus commissioned officers. They were outgunned and outmanned, but they had the gunny. That's you.
Who wrote that?
The Gunny is a book
Yeah.
that's about this, and this was a review of that book. Unfortunately, Sergeant Gonzalez was killed at Way City.
Right.
What would you be willing to share with me about that event?
About what I meant?
The Way City battle.
Well, I think that, in Alpha Company's situation, I'm glad that we had a couple of true leaders there. They were both of them friends of mine. Sergeant Gonzalez, Sergeant Burkhart. What we really had in common was the fact that they were on their second tour in Vietnam. So they were experienced NCOs. And I think that because of them, because of their experience, we got through that, although one was killed and one was seriously wounded. But without a doubt, their experience fighting that type of war was what got us through that, And there was a couple of things that happened that should have happened that didn't happen. Number one, Gonzalez, he and Burkhart should have been meritoriously promoted to staff sergeant, but somewhere along the line, Gonzalez didn't get his promotion. And I often think of that, was it because he was a KIA? Shouldn't have made it different, because Colonel Gravel, he was he was said that they were going to get promoted. Burkhart got promoted, but Gonzalez didn't. He got the Congressional Medal of Honor posthumously. I wrote a statement on that. In fact, I submitted about 3 or 4 drawings on it. I had my radio operator to do that. But the promotion he didn't get,
Why do you think that was?
It's probably because of paperwork, probably because of paperwork, But we got through that because of those two leaders.
But after one was killed and one was wounded, didn't you have to lead those men?
Oh yeah, but I'm just saying that we looking at the whole picture.
We are.
We're looking at the whole picture. The Marine Corps is such that if something happens to one, then the next one steps up.
Mm-hmm.
So the show goes on.
Right. And so because of your training preparation, you were ready to step up and take that role?
Well, I was right away, the CO was Captain Batchelor. He was out of there right away. So I was really, from that point on, I was in charge. And those two sergeants, they were my right hand.
Mm-hmm.
My right hand. And the fact that they had the experience, that helped.
Is there anything else you want to say about that battle, or?
Oh no, I don't know. No, that's about it. About Way.
That's fine.
Way is, it's Way. A lot of good people were lost in Way. But people die during war. That's what war is.
Vietnam, I think the first few days, you're just waiting to get shot. I don't know how the Marines feel that way, but I was just waiting. And then of course, you adapt. You have to adapt because you can't function, being afraid. You have to act. His reputation was that he never ducked, he never crawled.
Canley, he may not ever have even fully understood this himself, but Canley was a fatalist. Is, I suppose, but he certainly was then. And he clearly did believe that if today was your day, there wasn't nothing you could do about it.
During firefights, when we'd be all hugging Mother Earth, he'd be standing up directing us.
The result of that is he appeared to be fearless because he was fearless. And we all considered him totally, completely, and absolutely without fear.
He stood up in the middle of firefights. I don't know what else to say, but that's, and I know that might sound unrealistic to people listening, but you'll hear that from every Alpha Company Marine.
He gave them a chance. If they didn't get him in that first 30 seconds, then he said to himself, I don't have to worry about it today.
Gunny Canley was quiet. And unlike, most Marine NCOs and gunnies, he spoke very softly. But the one thing I got from him, and I didn't have much contact with him until Way City and then after, was he loved his enlisted Marines. And he never scolded us, he instructed us. But you could feel the love. You really could. I know that's maybe a tough word, in combat Marines, but you could feel the love. And, I would screw up or something, and it was never a chewing out. It was just, this is the way we do it. So you wanted to do it right for him after that.
He is individually and uniquely responsible for saving and or protecting the lives of a lot of good young Marines of that day, old gray-haired turds today. And all of us, the lieutenant included, literally worship the ground that he walks on. He's a special human being. A very, very special human being. Never takes any credit. Never wanted any credit. just wanted to take care of his Marines.
My Marines, because they believed in me, they would follow me to death. And I had no doubt about that.
The company commander was seriously wounded and had to be evacuated. A company gunny Canley, took over the company.
Canley came up to me, and he had a piece of shrapnel still in there, sticking out between his eyebrow and his eyeball. And I pulled it out, and he said, "I want that on the spot."
I call it the 3 missing days in Marine Corps history, which were never documented anywhere. Due to the nature of the battle, we had no officers.
The only thing I was doing was just responding. The Marines, the young Marines, it shows them that it's not do as I say, it's do as I do. And just being that close to them brings motivation to them.
During firefights, when we'd be all hugging Mother Earth, he'd be standing up directing us. And I think if you talk to every Alpha Company Marine, we're amazed that he was never shot.
My legacy was about taking care of Marines. Because I don't think that there was anyone that was more demanding than Gunnery Sergeant Canley.
This guy is a special leader in Marine Corps history, and we would have lost those 3 days.
No, this is for you. It was an honor being your leader. You made my job easy.
Is there anything else you want to share with me about your military experience that we haven't covered?
You know, I look at Vietnam, and I look at all these colonels and generals that have all these medals, you know, for job well done, whether it's commendation or distinguished, not distinguished service, but what is it? Legion of Merit and all that, right?
You were recommended for that, correct?
Yeah, I was recommended for it. But it's not about me. It's about the young troopers. Go over there, spend a tour of duty, and all of them going to spend a tour, whatever that is, 13 months or 12 months, unless they're medevaced or unless they get 3 Purple Hearts, they're going to spend a tour there, right? And they come back, that tour is all over, they don't even get a pat on the back, because all that commendation is saying, job well done, you know, a thank you, that's all it is.
Mm-hmm.
You see it with all these officers, but what about the enlisted? What about the people that's actually out doing the job? Doing the job. They're out there in the bush putting their life on line 24/7, and they get nothing for it.
Right. You don't feel that they're appreciated enough.
No, no, they don't count. Doesn't matter if they're getting out when they get back to the States. It doesn't matter. I think that appreciation should be shown, and it's only just writing up a little statement, right? Just writing up a little statement. You spend a tour in a combat zone, I think you rate a thank you.
I think so too.
And that's all that is. And you see it every officer, they have it. But that enlisted, that backbone of, they don't have anything.
There were 3 of you recommended for Silver Stars at the same time. What happened there?
Well, yeah, I might have told you that, right?
You did.
Yeah. It just, at that time, the award form, it had a race on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is Lieutenant Courtney, Staff Sergeant Buffalo, myself. This is at Contian, I think. I don't remember where it was. I went into the awards. But I noticed that viewing my record, right? That's how I became aware of it. We all recommended for a Silver Star. I get knocked down, I think it was at FMF PAC. Somebody knocked mine down to a Brown Star,
And the other 2 that were recommended at the same time as you were Caucasians, correct?
Right. And my favorite combat lieutenant, well-deserving, Courtney was one of them.
Mm-hmm.
The most respected warrior lieutenant that I knew during my tour in Vietnam. He was a warrior. He sort of had my mentality about being a leader.
Mm-hmm.
Al Courtney, I think of Texas. Name of little town, Texas, but yeah, he was something else. I'm not saying that they didn't, but all I'm saying is why would John Canley not get it? Who are you to be sitting behind this desk at FMF PAC to say, hey, this person don't rate this award. It's been approved at battalion, regiment, division, and you knock it down FMF PAC with a pen.
Let me ask you this. Do you think that the reason that your Medal of Honor came 50 years after the event possibly was also connected to some discrimination?
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. First of all, it started out, all the paperwork got lost. That's the first thing that happened. And basically, I know what happened there. It was thrown in the trash can, I'm sure. 4 or 5 people wrote statements. And then they had to go back and redo it because, I mean, I didn't even know anything about this until the captain, he was a captain at the time, Ray Smith, came by and said, "Hey, you heard anything? What's what award?" And then they told me about it, right? You know. And, yeah, without a doubt.
And then Julia Brownlee came along,
Well,
right?
she just, you know, to me,
Congresswoman Brownlee.
right, she is the ideal congressperson. She does her job. It sit in an office of a congressman for a couple, 3 years. Nothing about, you know, nothing. But she does her job. She does her job. She's on that VA board, and she's on that because that's what she want to do, you know.
She cares.
Yeah, she cares.
I know she does.
She cares.
I see her at veterans events.
Yeah, and basically, she's pretty senior, you know, so she got some leverage there. She could be on just about anything she want to be on. I think this is, what, a fourth term or something, you know, fourth or fifth, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But,
And even more recently, you heard from Major Brockton prior to being awarded the medal, but after it was approved. What happened there?
what, oh, you mean he and our little conversation?
Yeah.
Oh, it was just, he wanted to know who put the word out about the medal being approved. And he was sort of down on his team, sort of thought they done it. So I called him and says, no, I put it out. I'm the one that put the word out. I put the word out because the president told me that I could let my people know that the award has been approved and will be awarded at a later date, you know. And, well, you know, I said, no. I said, let's don't get into that. Let's don't get into that, Major, you know. You reviewed my jacket, and I know you don't want to talk about awards, you know.
It's tough.
Pardon?
It's tough sometimes.
It's tough. What do you mean?
Well, where people aren't treated fairly.
Well, yeah, I mean, not too much about myself, but I just look at what seniors neglect to do for subordinates, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You're not taking care of them. It all falls in that category.
And yet they're holding you up.
Exactly.
All right. You made some lasting friendships over the 28 years you spent in the Marine Corps. Should we talk about a few of them, like First Sergeant Moore?
Oh, First Sergeant Moore, he's Army, you know.
Yes.
He's not in the Marine Corps, he's Army. He's, to me, and I've met quite a few sergeant majors and first sergeants in the Army. But First Sergeant Moore and a First Sergeant Robinson,
Right.
they would be on the top of my list when it comes to senior enlisted. And they would be right in there with Marines that I know.
Why is that?
Just because of, their concern about troops, the way they treat troops, the example they set and all. That's basically.
How about Don DeBarros?
Oh, the Barrows. He's just a friend of mine. He's a friend of mine. I wouldn't elaborate on him being a good Marine.
Okay, let's invite A.J. Smith.
Oh, best Marine I've ever known.
Yeah,
Best Marine I've ever known.
because
Just he's the ideal leader. My ideal leader. You know, I've known him from the time he came out of boot camp. He was in my squad for a while. And I had the opportunity to work with him later on when I was going to go in the engineer field. I was with him for probably about 2 months.
Mhm.
He was a young corporal. But just his Marines, yeah, the most, yeah, he would be number one on my list.
how about Bobby Glard?
Oh, he's my good friend, good Marine, good friend. Been knowing him since '77. AJ, I've known him since '1.
It's a long time.
Yeah.
That's a long time. And Sergeant Major Leon Williams.
Oh, he and I went to Vietnam we went to Vietnam together in 67.
Mm-hmm.
He was company commander. He had one of the companies in staging out of Pendleton, and I had one. I was a young gunny, and he was a senior gunny. And he was a good friend of mine.
What about your best friend, Scotty?
Oh yeah, Scotty.
Tell me about Scotty.
We go back. To. Let's see, Scotty and I made. I think we met in '58. But we had not seen each other from 1967 until 2016.
Hmm.
So that gap, right? But it's just like time stood still. He went back to D.C. with me. In fact, we caught up a little. We stayed in the same room. When we got back together, we went up to Canada for a week and sort of enjoyed each other. But yeah, my friend, my oldest friend.
That's nice.
You know, and he actually got out of the Marine Corps after almost 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
But he went on civil service and all that. He was over in Iraq. He retired from civil service. And of course, his time counted, right?
Right?
You
To
know.
his retirement.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. But this guy is, he's would be my oldest and probably my best friend. You know, because of the time.
That's good. You made a lot of good friendships in the military.
Well, I don't have that many friends, though. I mean, I don't have that many friends, but all of them are in the Marine Corps, affiliated with the Marine Corps. All of them but one guy around here, Mark. You know, he oversees all this farmland.
Mm.
Yeah.
Right. He wasn't in the Marines. You met him since you
Right.
You know,
right.
right.
I met him 5 years ago. We got a book coming out about my autobiography, so you guys will be able to.
I need to have that.
Awesome.
You'll be able to.
We get a signed copy, right?
Oh, of course.
Of course. All right.
Of course.
What's it going to be called?
I don't know. We don't have a name for it yet. It might be. I don't know. It might be something like, I don't know, the making of Sergeant Major John Canley or something.
Awesome. So is somebody writing it for you?
Well, Ray, you know, it'll be a family member,
Oh.
you know, so I'll be co-author, you know.
That's awesome.
You know.
I'll let Tricia know that when that's available, I want one. I'll pay for it.
Well, you got the gunny, that's out, right?
I don't have that book. No, I just found that information. I'm gonna get it.
Get the gunny, you know, and we're putting the package together. But basically what I'm gonna be doing, I'm gonna be going around to these bases and VA places and just hanging out with Marines. You know,
On a book tour?
it won't be a book tour. It'll be, you know, it won't be a book. It'll be sort of a book tour, you know, sort of.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just, but my thing is just to, you know, mingle among Marines and veterans and just sort of chat with them and, you know, take photos and let them sort of know who I am. You know, and I'll be in uniform.
Sounds good.
Like I've already been contacted a number of times, the state of Arkansas, so they have me, I'm going down there doing their fair in Little Rock. And just hang out, you know,
Mm-hmm.
take pictures with the community.
You like to go to Marine bases and exercise with the guys.
Well, I do that too, you know.
I know.
But I'm you know, I'm gonna get a little time out in the field. I got my field utilities and all that, and what I really like doing is sort of talking to staff NCOs and young officers. You know, I like to talk about that staff NCO and officer relationship.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I found that I had a session for about an hour at Quantico, and the young lieutenants and captains, right? And there was some two-star general. He was sitting to my right, and these officers were so interested, you know, in what I had to say. After an hour, the only thing that the general, this is a two-star, could say, he elaborated on a couple of things that I talked about, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because these young officers, they ask you all type of questions, you know, especially when it comes to that working relationship, right?
Right.
You know, I could tell they enjoyed it, but I enjoyed it too, you know.
I bet you did.
Yeah. Because I knew they were listening to, you know, every word I had to say, you know.
That's the environment you like to be in, though, isn't it? With the troops.
Yes, without a doubt.
Where you're comfortable.
Without a doubt. I know how to relate to troops, you know.
A lot of experience.
A lot of experience. But then it's more than experience. It's more than experience. You can always tell when people are interested in what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
You know, doesn't matter whether it's young troopers or officers or what, you know.
Or me.
Right. Well, I don't know about civilians, you know. I don't know.
Okay. Where were you when your service ended?
I was in Hawaii.
Rough assignment.
Right.
Rough assignment.
Well, you know, Hawaii, to me, Hawaii is a nice place to visit. You know, I would not want to reside there because you're too restricted, you know. The good thing about me being stationed there, in fact, I was there stationed there for over 4 years, was the fact that the training there is limited, because of, the terrain and all that and space, but we would go through the training cycle, which was 6 months, but we would come to places like 29 Palms, which was, we go there and stay a month, right?
From paradise to the desert.
Where we'd be over in a big island. So you had like a 6 months period where you're training, and then the second 6 months you sort of go aboard ship. I'm referring to a battalion. There's almost 2,000 Marines, and you float around for 6 months, and you're basically training with these other countries, these other nations, right? You're training with the Australians, the New Zealanders, the Kenyans, the Koreans, the Filipinos. That's what made it fun. That's what made it fun.
Met a lot of different people.
Yes. And, so when we talk about, different countries, whether it's Australia, New Zealand, Korea, and we talk about the services, their training, I already know that the Marines are the best trained. I already know that because we've had that competition. We've had that competition. And down in Australia, I never will forget this. They were so surprised. This was our last day, right? We're supposed to have like a barbecue at noon, but this is the day before the end of the operation. And they could not believe, we moved like all night, right? And we woke them up about 4 in the morning. They couldn't believe how we got across that terrain and all. They were shocked.
You snuck up on them.
Oh yeah, because they didn't, they didn't expect it. But the best trained service, and I know because I've trained with them, right? The best trained unit in the world is the U.S. Marines. They are the best trained. They weren't that way when they went into Vietnam. They were not. They were not. They still had the best. They had the best troopers though, but they were not the best trained. But just from what I've been exposed to, say for the last 3 months, Marine Week and all that, I've had the opportunity to observe training and sort of participate a little in the different weapons and things. The Marines are the best trained in the world. They're the best trained, and I think they're the best led. Just from what I've seen in the last 3 months.
Good.
I'm comparing it with Vietnam. They had the best troops, but the training and the equipment was no.
We've learned since then.
Yeah,
gotten
right.
better.
Exactly.
Good.
They're the best trained. They're the best equipped, and my opinion, best led. So the only way that they can lose a war is by not allowing the military to fight it.
We'll get to that in a minute.
See?
So I want to talk to you about when you got your orders, your final orders, to go to the Marine Corps headquarters, and you actually decided to get out
Oh, I mean, that was,
after that.
I had basically some advance notice about a year prior to that.
Mm-hmm.
Just said, someone that was in a position of authority up there said, oh, you managed to stay there so long, we know where you're going after that. You coming up here? I said, come on. And that was the end of that. But when I received the orders, it was to go be the monitor, which the last 2 years in the Marine Corps, monitor, 90% of your time on the phone, trying to explain to these first sergeant and sergeant majors why you can't send them to a Pacific place. No way. You know. So I got off.
A desk job wasn't for you.
Well, no, it was, you know, my love in the Marine Corps was basically training Marines,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So why would I go up there and spend 90% of my time on the telephone for my last couple of years? No way.
A lot of people would have thought that being the Marine Corps' first sergeant and working for General Kelly was a pretty good assignment.
Being what?
Didn't you say the Marine Corps' first sergeant?
No, I said had I gone up there, I'd have probably been the first, sergeant major of the Marine Corps.
Right.
You know, but I don't think the Marine Corps was ready for me anyway, really.
Maybe not. Maybe not.
Really, but no, I wasn't going to go up there. No way. The only thing I was asked, you know, you have, on your reports, you have 3 choices for choice of duty stations, right? The only thing that I was putting on my report was 1st Marine Division, 3rd Marine Division, 2nd Marine Division. Right? So that's telling you something, right? Hey, you know, I want to go where Marines are, where ground troopers are.
Right.
You know. I'd had duties like, you know, I mean, in Marine barracks as a first sergeant, you know, recruiting as a sergeant major, you know, I'd had other, you know, but my love for the Marine Corps as a Marine period, whether it was 0369 infantry unit leader or 9999, which is first sergeant or sergeant major, was infantry, period.
Right.
You know, although I had other assignments. I'm in Marine barracks, that was okay. Did well out there, had a good unit, I think the best barracks in the Marine Corps. But that wasn't my heart, you know, right?
I understand.
You know, out on as a sergeant major, RS sergeant major, I had the largest area in the Marine Corps, RS Sacramento. We split the San Joaquin Valley, extended all the way north to the Oregon border, all the way south to Bakersfield. We extended east all the way to Idaho Falls.
Mm.
So I stayed on the road, you know. 90% of it was on the road, you know. That was okay, but I left there. I was getting ready to get out, but I decided to stay in and went to Hawaii, infantry battalion. I loved it. But that was you know, what happened was when I got orders to go to Hawaii, I was going to be assigned a battalion, right? They'd assigned me, but when I reported in, they tried to change it. They tried to change it from battalion to air wing. But what they didn't know was the regimental commander who I had worked for in 61 in anti-tanks, he was a regimental commander, Colonel Stute.
Mm.
I had called and talked to him, and he said, "Oh, I got a battalion. Yeah, you got it." But when I reported in, the brigade sergeant major tried to change it when he seen who I was, right? And I just walked out of his office, went on down the regiment, and talked to the colonel, and went on down to my battalion, and this sergeant major, who was trying to stay there, Sergeant Major Graham, he says, well, you need, I said, no, I'm going to go to chow, I'll be back, you can clean out your desk. I come back, he's still lingering around. I said, well, what's, he think they're going to change it, but I know they're not going to change it. I already know, right? You know. But anyway, he finally left, around 3 o'clock. But half of what he was doing as a sergeant major, I gave to my driver. Gave to my driver. But, I stayed there for over 4 years. Same job. I had a Colonel Stewart, he got transferred, but Colonel Lay came in. Now he was my 1st Battalion commander for about a month and a half at Fuji, Okinawa, when I first made Sergeant Major. So he became the regimental commander. He tried to bring, I said, no, sir, I'm not coming up there. I said, I expected to stay in the battalion. Well, I said, no, you don't need me up here. Well, I said, I don't care about seniority. I said, you can bring a first sergeant up here if you want to. I'm not coming up there. But I was able to hold that job for over 4 years. Of course, we have different people, because we would build up, go through the training cycle, deploy for 6 months, come back, people rotate, get out and all. We build up, go through the training cycle, deploy for 6 months, So I was able to do that for 4 years. Loved it. And then to give that up and go say, no, last 2 years, no, I wasn't going to do that.
So you retired?
I retired, yeah.
In Hawaii?
In Hawaii.
And then you were involved in a lot of businesses after you retired.
Well, just my own business. There, I stayed over there. I worked for a little while, went to a little school, and just got out of there because actually I went up to Canada, Vancouver, Canada, because at that time the Canadian government was trying to establish business in Asia other than natural resources.
Mm-hmm.
We go over every quarter, trade shows and all that, come back, and they done created what we was trying to sell, right? Copied and all. They had no intentions of getting anything from America, from outside of their country, other than resources, right?
Right. Creations,
right.
And they build it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's how I got into hip hop. Garments, textile.
Mm-hmm.
Spent a lot of time in Korea, gone through China. Even went back to Vietnam 6 times after they lifted the embargo in '96. I was there probably about a month after they lifted the embargo. But at that time, the quality, although you had the Japanese and Koreans, they had gone in there right after the war, right? But the quality of merchandise just wasn't what we wanted,
Mm-hmm.
Give you an example. When I first went there, Nike had a little, they was doing a little production over there in Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
So they'd been in there for a little while, I think, sort of through Japan. But the merchandise that they was producing, they weren't bringing it to the States, I don't think. They were selling it outside of America. This is in 96. And I think it was 2003. I went back over there. The last time I was there, they had a complex out about 5 or 6 miles outside of Saigon, and you couldn't even go in that factory. You could not go in the factory. That's Nike,
Right.
right? A huge complex. The place was huge, and that's where they do a lot of their production right today.
Mm-hmm.
Probably more. Nike probably does more shoe production in Vietnam than they do in China.
Interesting. And you were involved with the Black Skiers Association too?
Oh, yeah. I used to be a vendor. I was their main vendor. National Brother Skiers.
National Brotherhood
Brotherhood of
of
Skiers.
Skiers, okay.
Yeah, they have 72 black ski clubs throughout America. At that time, I don't know how many they got now. 72, and they have a summit every year, mini summit and the major summit, where they go to different ski resorts. I would say at least 70% of them are in Colorado, but they go to Idaho. They've even gone up to Blackcomb, Whistler, Canada, Austria. They went there once. But no, I used to be a vendor. I was their main vendor.
Not a skier?
Oh, no, I ski too.
Oh, good.
Oh, yeah, but I mean, when you work and when you go in there, you don't ski because it's work.
Didn't you design a patch for them?
I done it right. I designed the National Brotherhood of Skiers, right. Yeah, that was my main seller. We used to, I had what they call on-the-spot embroidery.
Mm-hmm.
So you could have your name or whatever you want, your hat or whatever, jacket or whatever. Plus they putting patches on. I had a Korean there doing all my embroidery and embroidery machine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was last 1 week, and it was very profitable.
Good.
Very profitable.
Okay, I'm going to change gears on you a little bit. How do you think your wartime or military experience affected your life after you left the military?
I mean, you miss that military life, that camaraderie. It's different with civilians. Like I said, I've only made one friend really since I got out.
Mm-hmm.
Mark. All my friends are affiliated with the military. It's just different. The camaraderie relation. It's just different.
I understand. You have shared experiences with those
Exactly.
people.
Exactly. And I go visit places. Most of the time, it's some military friend.
Mm-hmm.
If I go overseas, even if I go to another state, it's to visit some friend that I had for the military.
So you have some lasting effects like PTSD from your time there?
Oh yeah, well, I think that anyone, I'm mainly talking about, Vietnam. It's there, but people handle it different ways.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, different ways. But I also understand that, we can never forget that, the average age in Vietnam was 19.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. A lot of people don't understand that. So when you look at 19 versus 26, Second World War, big difference, right?
Big difference.
So you have a lot of these youngsters right out of high school, right off of a basketball or football team, right into combat. You're on a team, but it's different.
Right.
It's not, if you lose the game, then maybe next week or next month we'll win the game. If you lose that game in combat, that's your life, right?
Right.
So when you look at how it affected a lot of these young kids, I understand it because I was there and seeing what they went through.
Correct.
And it was amazing how they grew up so fast. But then when you look at how it affected a lot of them, it affected them different.
Of course.
To me, Vietnam was just, it was business. That's what I did, right? I was a Marine, and during war, a lot of people die. You're thankful that you didn't, but a lot of things happen, and people they never get back to normal.
Wait, right. You said you saw some of the physical effects
Oh,
of some of these young people.
Yeah, I see. People that lose all their hair, people, youngsters turn gray. Yeah.
In a very short period of time.
Very short period of time.
Matter of days.
Well.
Or weeks.
Weeks, yeah.
And you're dealing with some effects of Agent Orange as well, right?
Well, I think that, people that were up north, that's where that Agent Orange was, and I think that most of us who was there was affected by it. Of course, it affected people in different ways.
Right. Yep. And sleeplessness.
Oh yeah, I don't want to even sleep now. But you get around it, you learn how to survive. Like, I might sleep a couple hours at night, never no more than a couple hours at a time, right? Before I actually went to the VA to register for Agent Orange, which of course you're supposed to register, I used to think that my lack of sleep, or my sleeping pattern, was because in Vietnam, I never slept from about 10 o'clock to about 4. Never, right?
10 o'clock p.m. to 4 in the morning.
Right. Because that's when Victor Charlie was on the prowl, and really the only thing he had was that element of surprise,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And I'm convinced that a lot of your KIAs during Vietnam, they were killed in their sleep, you know. You know, you have to vision, you know, when you're out, actually on operations, these people are actually sort of sweeping during the day. In other words, you're looking for Victor Charlie all day, and at night you are in the defense. Of course, you send out your patrols and listen posts and all that, but you still have to maintain that 50% alertness, right? In other words, if you got two people in a foxhole, you got one person that's alert at all times. And, you know, that's when the enemy is probing. You know, that's, you know, they probe you and they find out where your weaknesses are. And then that's where they strike you, you know. If you're not ready, once they penetrate you, you know, it's all over, you know.
Right.
So, you know, there again, the leadership, you know, the leaders, they got to be up and about, because that's the only way that these subordinates is going to be alert, you know. They know that that you're going to be checking on them, and you expect for each position to, you know, to be alert, you know.
Right. So what do you think some of the life lessons are that you learned from your military service?
You know, just you respect. You know, you treat people like you expect to be treated. You know, you never forget that respect is a two-way street. You know, and it doesn't matter if you're dealing with seniors or subordinates. You know, you treat people like you expect to be treated, you know, and most of the time you're going to get the same back, you know.
Right, I agree. And you really only wanted to receive what you had earned, right? You wanted to earn your way.
Of course.
And you still do.
Of course. You know, life is about hard work. Life is about working for what you want, you know.
Mm-hmm. And then you feel like you deserve it since you worked for it.
Of course, of course.
I agree with you. How's your military service impacted your feelings about war or the military in general?
Well, you know, I love the military. You know,
I do.
You know, I mean, I love the Marine Corps. I mean, you know, I think that, you know, I'm who I am today because of the military.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because of the people that I've met and been associated with. That's what I am today. I'm
Product of the Marine Corps.
Exactly.
So how do you feel about politics in the military?
Well, you know, I mean, I just think that, you know, politics. I mean, the Marine Corps is, you know, we're trained to take care of America, right?
Right.
You know, and basically, my thing is, if you got to go to war, it should be for this country, you know. And once you're committed, then, you know, the politicians let the Jones fight the war, right? You know.
Right.
You know, you don't have all these rules of engagements and all that. I mean, I'm saying once you are on that battlefield, right, it's about defeating the enemy and moving on, you know.
Politics should not be involved in that.
Not at all. Not at all. I mean, once you know, we don't start wars, you know, as Marines or as soldiers. We fight the wars.
Correct.
You know. So, you know, once the people or politicians get you into the wars, then you let the Marine Corps, the Navy, Air Force, and Army fight the war. You know. You don't have all these rules and regulations and can-dos and can't-dos. You know.
No, because the Marines are trained for that, not the politicians, right?
Exactly. They don't know nothing about, you know, I mean, what percentage of them even serving the war now? I mean, you know, you don't even have 3-4%. You know, I think it's about 4% that's ever been, you know, so if you get them into a war, let them fight it.
How do you think politics affected the outcome of Vietnam?
Oh, it was terrible. Terrible. I mean, you know, terrible. I mean, all you have to, I mean, not just Vietnam. I mean, you look at Korea. That's a prime example, right? Had you just heard MacArthur, I'm not saying do whatever, you know, but just heard him, we wouldn't be having what's going on in North Korea right today, you know. But for his ideas or his way of thinking, he basically sort of got fired, right? You know.
Right.
So, you know, once you send them to war, then you let them fight it. You let them win it. You support them, they'll win it.
So you think the people on the ground in the arena, let's say, know better than the people in Washington?
Of course. I mean, you know, I'm not saying that that the people that fight the war might know more about starting a war, but I'm saying once you commit them, then you let them fight it. Right?
Because they're living it every day.
Exactly. All you do, you just support them. You know.
I like that. What message would you like to leave for future generations who might hear or view this interview?
I mean, career Marine, love the Marine Corps. Number 2 true love in the Marine Corps was training Marines, right? The only thing that exceeded that was leading Marines in combat. You know, that would be something that would be unexplainable. It's like training for a football game and hardly waiting to play it.
I understand.
You know.
But you trained those Marines, and you stayed with those Marines, and you were prepared for combat because of your love for America. Isn't that right?
Well, I mean, I don't know how to respond to that. You know, basically, I think it was, you know, my love for the Marines. You know, my love for the Marines, my love for something that you know, I was a part of from a young age. You know,
Very young.
You know.
Right. But isn't the mission of all of the military to protect our freedoms?
Well, yeah, of course. But I think that what makes Marines really stand out is more so from what they consider themselves a part of, and that's the Marine Corps. You know, the Marine Corps. I mean, you know, country and all that too. But I mean, it's the strength that they get from just being a Marine. You know, the training, the belief. I think that's what makes them undefeatable, really.
Good. How do you feel about all young Americans serving their country in some way?
I think that they should all have to serve their country in some way. You know, I mean, they should be obligated to have to give a couple of years back for their country, you know. Some type of service. It doesn't have to be the military. There's so many other things that they can do, you know.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of support.
Of course.
Positions that we need.
You know, that's one thing. I think that you know, there's so many Americans that take America for granted. You know, this is my home. This is my country. And my question, yeah, you was born here, but what have you done for this country? You know, what have you done for this country? You know, a lot of people, all they've done is taken, you know. So, yeah, that should be a requirement, without a doubt. You know, without a doubt.
Is there anything that you feel we haven't discussed or should be added to our interview?
I think we've discussed everything. Really.
All right. Sergeant Major John Canley, I want to thank you for allowing me to interview you for the Veterans History Project. I appreciate your service to our nation and the sacrifices you've made to keep our country safe. Thank you, sir.
It is now my incredible privilege to present Sergeant Major John Canley with the Congressional Medal of Honor. And I would like to ask the military aide to come forward and read the citation. Thank you. The
The President of the United States, in the name of Congress, takes pleasure in awarding the Congressional Medal of Honor to Gunnery Sergeant John L. Canley, United States Marine Corps, for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty in action against the enemy while serving as Company Gunnery Sergeant, Alpha Company, 1st Battalion, 1st Marines, 1st Marine Division, from 31 January to 6 February 1968 in the Republic of Vietnam. Alpha Company fought off multiple vicious attacks as it rapidly moved along the highway toward Hue City to relieve friendly forces that were surrounded by the enemy. Despite being wounded in these engagements, Gunnery Sergeant Canley repeatedly rushed across fire-swept terrain to carry his wounded Marines to safety. After his commanding officer was severely wounded, Gunnery Sergeant Canley took command and led the company into Hue City. At Hue City, caught in deadly crossfire from enemy machine gun positions, he set up a base of fire and maneuvered with a platoon in a flanking attack that eliminated several enemy positions. Retaining command of the company for 3 days, he led attacks against multiple enemy fortified positions while routinely braving enemy fire to carry wounded Marines to safety. On 4 February, he led a group of Marines into an enemy-occupied building in Hue City. He moved into the open to draw fire, located the enemy, eliminated the threat, and expanded the company's hold on the building room by room. Gunnery Sergeant Canley then gained position above the enemy strongpoint and dropped in a large satchel charge that forced the enemy to withdraw. On 6 February, during a fierce firefight at a hospital compound, Gunnery Sergeant Canley twice scaled a wall in full view of the enemy to carry wounded Marines to safety. By his undaunted courage, selfless sacrifice, and unwavering devotion to duty, Gunnery Sergeant Canley reflected great credit upon himself and upheld the highest traditions of the Marine Corps and the United States Naval Service.